Hi, welcome back to the Gabster channel. My name is Gabby and I'm very excited today because I was able to tap into my vintage CD player that I love and send it an I2S signal from this beautiful Ian DAC streamer. And the sound came out really beautiful. So I was very encouraged and started exploring more and more into this. And this is going to be at the beginning the short version. If you want the longer version, you can be towards the end of the video. I'll talk more in detail for people who wants to know all the little nitty-gritty details. But overall, what I did is I got this vintage CD player a while back, and I love the sound of it. And I particularly bought it because it's a rare one. It has 4 TDA1541A chips in parallel. There's 4 of them together, and it's got some beautiful power supply built in. It's got a decent design. It's been known to sound really good. So I was curious about it, and when I got it, it sure sounded great. And I thought, what if I could actually send it a stream? And will that work? How will it sound? So I started doing this, and I spent a lot of time looking on the internet, finding schematics, studying the schematics, searching the DIY community. And I finally was able to figure out which are the I2S signal traces, and I was able to tap into them. And I sent it a signal. At first, nothing came out, and I was like, oh my God, it's not working. And then finally it dawned to me, but yes, I have the I2S signal, but I forgot to connect ground because they're 2 separate pieces of equipment. They don't share the same ground. So once I connected the ground, kaboom, and music, beautiful music started coming out. And I was very happy. And I started actually figuring out how to make things sound better. And I started working on the capacitors and how to make them sound a lot better. And if you guys have one of these units, anybody, changing the output capacitors makes a huge difference. At the beginning, it sounded good and I loved it, but the more I listened to it, the more I could see that the bass was a bit boomy and it's not tight, especially comparing to my D11 DACs that I've built before. And I was comparing them one after the other, and I wasn't too crazy about the bass. I was happy with everything else because the sound stage was beautiful. And then I replaced the capacitors, the output capacitors, with some vintage Russian capacitors and some bypassed with some beautiful MyFlex capacitors. And immediately it sounded better, but still wasn't quite right, the bass. Then I said, but I had 10 microfarads and these are supposed to be 5, so maybe I put too big of a capacitor. And I have those beautiful Jensen capacitors, but they were 3.9. I figured that's close, and a half of MyFlex, that's 4.5. So great, so let's try them. And as soon as I tried them, boom, the bass was nice and tight. It was beautiful, and now the whole sound sounded great. And now I was like, oh wow, there's great potential here. And this is still with my wonky I2S wires. They are like pretty much this long and skinny with no ground on them. So I imagine once I start tightening things up, I could squeeze out a little bit more out of it. And but I did not want to really kind of dismantle this DAC and make a big mess of it. It's a beautiful vintage DAC. It's nice to keep in its tradition. So I figure I'll build my own. I can get some TDA1541 chips, and I managed to get a couple of really nice ones. These are S1 chips, the better quality ones. And I started experimenting with those. I've already started the building block to get this thing going, and even Rusty is already interested in it. So stay tuned if you want to watch how this thing unfolds. There's going to be a couple of videos about this thing. So, because so far all my experiments leading to some pretty good sound. So the first thing you might want to ask is, like, how does it sound compared to the other DACs, for example, compared to my DAC, the D11? And I would have to say it's almost as good. It's got a different vintage flavor in it, not in a bad way, but okay, I got a cat. Yes, We can't go out. No, see, say hi. Yeah, here you go, look, say. Yeah, we can't go out now, it's too cold, and I have to go in like 10 minutes, okay? Yep. So how does it sound? Does it actually sound as good as my D11? It's almost as good, and it's just have a little vintage flavor. I'm not saying that in a bad way, it's actually in a good way. So it's one of those sounds that you actually fall in love with. And that's why there's a big following behind those chips. Now, I'm not gonna put clips comparing sounds yet because I'm still not finalized the version. The wires are shoddy. My I2S signal wires are really, really sad. I really need to improve them. They need to be shorter, tighter, and more insulated. I also want to do some improve the power section as well. But it still sounds good as it is. My plan is to actually not demolish this CD player and make a big mess out of it. I'm gonna keep it pretty much original. It's gonna be basically a DAC and a CD player at the same time. There'll be a little switch and I can switch the I2S signal to the CD player versus the streamer. And this way it'll be we'll keep the vintage feeling and keep that unit as it was meant to be pretty much. I have to say though, for the sound, the biggest improvement was changing those capacitors. I cannot, if you guys have one of those units, that's the first thing you need to do. Like it changes night and day. When I first tried it with the original capacitor, the bass was kind of boomy and it was kind of floppy, wasn't tight. And I thought that was like, oh, that's a TDA1541. I've heard that's the kind of sound they give. But it wasn't true. As soon as I changed the capacitors, at first I put some Russian capacitors, and it did improve a little bit, but it still had that same floppiness in the bass and same boominess. And I wasn't very happy, but I made a mistake. These were supposed to be 5 microfarads capacitor. I said, oh, let's put some 10, maybe because that's what I had. So, okay, maybe it'll work. Then I said, oh, I have those 3.9 microfarad capacitors, and I would put some MyFlex about 0.4 with them. So I'm almost 4.5. So that's pretty close. So I did that, and what a transformation. The sound was completely transformed. The bass was now tight, and there was no that floppiness. Still have good bass though, but lost that looseness and the boominess. So overall, the sound, I would describe it a tiny bit more bass than your regular ESS chip, but it's in a good way at this time. Now that I've controlled that boominess, it's much better. The rest has nice soundstage, slightly better soundstage, I would say. So my plan is I already actually got some nice TDA1541S1 crown chips. So I've got 2 of them. We're gonna try to build this separately, give it the best power supply we can give it. So use lots of E in Canada's good power supplies like the UC Pures and stuff like that. Connect it really tightly to the board so it's not like a big distance between them, and then check the sound. And then I'm going to post some sound clips for you guys comparing sound here and there. So this is the CD player, the CD3, and it comes with 4 TDA1541. You can see the boards here, 1, 2, 3, 4. When I got this thing, a couple of those were loose, just like that, and the soldering was pretty not connected. I since soldered one of them, and this one actually took completely out because I wanted to study it and understand what's going on. So you could see here, the chip is underneath the heatsink here. These are all the capacitors, and there's a couple op amps here. So there's 4 of these identical ones. If you have one of those players and you have the same problem, check out, make sure these are not loose, and make sure I would connect them with some standoffs so they actually hold each other better. I'm going to actually put this one back in, and I'm going to solder it just to make sure this doesn't happen. But anyways, why I took this, and I've been studying this and studying the schematics and watching some things on the DIY community, and I finally figured out that the I will try to find out where is the I2S signal going to, because I would like to feed it with a I2S signal from my Raspberry Pi via the 50Q7 buy-in and try to get as good of a sound as we can, because I love the sound the way it's coming from the CD player, and I can reproduce that magic. That would be good. And so what I finally figured out is that the first 3 pin here on that SK1 connector, starting from this side here, 1, 2, 3, the very first one is the data, the second one is the clock, and the third one is WS. So all I have to do is disconnect 3 of those wires, feed the I2S signal from the Raspberry Pi system, and hopefully we'll get some great sound out of this. So I made this little, this is an extension from a GPIO extension, little thing you can buy those off Amazon. I can put a link of that. And so you cut the first 5 pins of it, and also it's a double, so I took 1 row off. So now we have 5 pins. We're gonna put them right in here. So now we can connect the first 5 back in here. But the other 3, this is where the I2S signal is. We're gonna use some regular jumper connectors. You can get those pretty much anywhere. This is the third one here. And so this one goes back to where it used to be. Here we go. And now I've got my 3 I2S signal, and that's going to go to the 54Pi via from the Raspberry Pi system. So, and we're going to feed this bad boy with some really clean, nice I2S signal. So here you can see the connection slightly from a little bit afar. So we've got everything is connected the way it used to be, except we were able to extract the I2S signal and disengage the I2S signal coming from the CD player. So the CD player will not play CDs, but in the future I can put a relay here and can go click, click, and switch between CD and DAC and have it all stay in the same enclosure. And so this information to get those 3 pins and figure out where they are took me about 2 days of research and looking at schematics and stuff like that. So if you are doing this mod, consider yourself lucky, because that will save you a lot of work and a lot of research. So I connected everything and no sound. I was like, damn, nothing's happening. And said, damn. And then it just, after like an hour, just remembered that, because I was once hooking up a TDA1541 and I had the same issue too. And I forgot that it's not just the I2S signals you need to connect, you still need the ground, because the RPI 54Pi ground is completely different than this ground. There's no ground basically connecting it. You just have the positive, but you need both to connect it. And this is when I connected the ground, and boom, it worked. And to do that, I had to come back in here, and actually I'll show you what I did here, is instead of having 5 pins, I put only 4, because this one is actually the ground for the I2S. And it still connects to the ground of everything as well. So I'm only using the 4 pins here, and the basically 4 pins on the I2S. And as soon as I did that, kaboom, we got sound, and a beautiful sound. So that was a good thing. And now I can actually relax and kind of focus on trying to change and update a few things to make it sound better. But it already sounds decent and not too bad. So we're gonna try to see how much we can squeeze out of it. So the first upgrade is the output capacitors. These need to be replaced. Those desoldering guns are just so nice to have. Once you have one of those, it's hard to go back to the other way. Just come out just like that. There we go. So now we've got the Jensen capacitors in. So I decided to go with a 250 volt MyFlex instead of 600. It's quite a difference in size, and I figure I'm struggling to put these big guys, and really it's like an overkill. I mean, there's hardly not more than 15 volts here. So so that's going to go here. That's going to look a little nicer and more ergonomics. And here we go. We got the capacitors. I put little studs underneath, and they're actually epoxied in, so to give them support from moving, so they don't actually rattle, and also protects the board from breaking. So I wanted to secure the capacitors, so I put a standoff here. There used to be a hole, so I put a standoff in the middle, and we're going to lock those capacitors. So this way the capacitor will be locked into place and they will not move, because the pads on the bottom are not that strong, so they can actually break off. So this will make everything more secure. I'm going to put in a link in the corner here how I built my reference DACs with D11. And in this corner here, I'll put a link in here about 10 great high quality songs that you can listen to on your system. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, consider supporting me and subscribing to this channel, and keep an eye, because I'm still going to release some more videos about the TDA1541 and how things are going to evolve. Take care and see you again.